Okay, hello Year 4 and welcome back for your next art lesson. As I've said before, this week's art lesson is sort of in two parts. As what you start this week, you'll be carrying on with next week. So you are going to need 2 pieces of paper. You are going to need some kind of recycling, like a newspaper or an old magazine. I've got an old magazine. It's the text that you are after. You'll also need a glue stick. You might choose to use colouring pencils if you've got some, and you will need a sketching pencil. So I've got a pencil over here that I'm going to use. We are going to be recreating a piece of art by a Swedish street artist called Stone G. And Stone G works a lot with recycled materials and different patterns like you would find from all of your magazines when you find all your little words. And that's the sort of thing that we're looking for. You want to find those words. Once you have created your background, we are going to start thinking about tone and light and how to make things look 3D and how to add shadows and light to them to make it look like somebody's looking at a camera, because you will end up with a portrait of Greta Thunberg as well, as she is Swedish. So, first things first, we're going to start off by creating our background. So you're going to want one plain piece of paper and you're going to want your magazine. And this is where you can start to be a bit messy, because you are just going to start ripping bits of your newspaper up and sticking them onto your A4 paper. Try and be as careful as you can though to make sure that you don't get any pictures on it. So it's all just entirely made up of words. So I'm going to go little bit by little bit. And I'm going to stick all of this down flat to my page. And the reason why we're doing it on A4 paper and the reason why we're using a glue stick is so that it doesn't get wet when you're trying to do your next piece on it next week. Because if you use PVA, usually your page tries to screw itself up and starts folding and closing on itself. And we don't really want that. So, just going to take all the little bits. If you've got straight edges, it might be useful to try and use them to layer up and collage, because you don't need all of your writing to be going the same way. You can choose to overlap them. You could choose to make it so that all of your sides have got jagged edges. And you can just place them down however you like. And you need to fill up the whole page so that none of the page has any white showing through. So really, you want the whole page to be completely covered in a nice smooth layer of recycled paper. Now I can see that my page is completely covered in text. This is also completely smooth. There is nothing sticking up. It's just completely flat and smooth. For those of you who have said that you don't have access to maybe some magazines or newspaper or to a glue stick to make the background, the way that you're going to try and make that texture is through a rubbing. So I would recommend getting a pencil or a really light crayon or a colouring pencil and taking yourself up against something that's got some sort of texture. So I might go and try it against a wall or against my floor, which is made of wood. And I'll do a really light rubbing of it just to give it that texture. So here in front of me now, I've got one that I've done using just rubbings. So I've done a mixture of rubbings. I've got one from a door, one from a floor, one from some wallpaper. If you go over and give it a light wash of colour. Okay, those of you who have done a collage, you will need to do something similar to give yours a wash of colour. So I'm going to take a yellow pencil, as yellow shows up quite clearly, and just really lightly, you want to do a wash of colour just over your background, just to give it a tint of colour. If you wanted to be really clever, you could go in with a second colour as well. So you might take some green, and you could really lightly go in with some green as well, just to give that background a little bit more colour to it, rather than just a plain piece of text. Once you've given it a wash of colour, so it's not very easy to see on my one, but I've given it a wash of some purple, some blue, some green and some yellow, and I've just gone over the whole top part, so it's just got a really light wash of colour. You're going to move that off to the side because you won't need that now until you start your main piece. But you can't start your main piece until you've had some practice. So this is what your second piece of paper is for. So we're going to start getting used to some tone. So I would like you, if you have a ruler, to measure out near the top of a piece of paper a 10 centimetre long line, and then I'd like you to measure out down each side a centimetre on each edge, so that you end up with a lovely rectangle. So after you've drawn your top line, you will then draw your two side lines, and then you draw your bottom line. You then, after you've got your rectangle, need to go back in and split that into boxes. So you can just go in and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then you get 10. So you should end up with 10 boxes if you use the centimetre line. We're going to start thinking about tone. So tone is when something is getting darker or lighter, so a bit like adding in your shading. So at one end of your box, you're not going to do anything to it. That's going to be your white box, which is the lightest shade and piece of tone that you can get in your art. At the other end, however, I want you with your pencil to push down as hard as you possibly can to get that end box to go as dark as possible. How do you get from here all the way down to nothing? That's where you're going to start practicing with some tones. You're going to go along, gradually just starting to press lighter and lighter and lighter with your pencil. So your next one shouldn't be too much lighter than your first box, so they should still be quite similar. And then gradually you're just going to get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. Some of you might have some darker boxes than me. I might go back in and add that one a little bit more tone to it, just to make it a little bit darker. Because when you're sketching, you won't always just use one coat of your pencil. You will go over it a few times. If you wanted to make something look more 3D, for example, a circle, we would draw our circle first. And if we wanted something, the light, say, to hit on it, I might choose to have the light hitting it from this angle here. If I was going to do that, you can start by just drawing a very, very faint semicircle. And this piece of semicircle here, you aren't going to shade at all because you know that you want your light to come in from this side. Then on your furthest side away, you can start making it as dark as possible. And as you get closer and closer, this isn't my neatest drawing, as you get closer and closer towards that side of the ball, you'll start pushing lighter and lighter with your pencil, so that when you finally get to that really light bit, you can't touch it at all. And if you filled all of this in, gradually getting lighter as you get closer to that arrow, you want your furthest point to be the darkest. As you are going to be doing a pencil sketch, we need to have a little think about how we're going to start off with sketching. We've spoken before in other classes about how sketching isn't just drawing your straight lines like this. That's not sketching, that's doing a line drawing. To sketch, you gradually work bit by bit to build up your shape. So, if we were going to think about an eye is something that's quite simple to try and draw. You could very quickly draw yourself an eye, move some out of the way, just by doing a semicircle, and then a circle in the middle, and then your circle in the middle. That does look a bit like an eye, but then you haven't sketched it, so it's going to be really hard for you to add tone and shading into that eye because it's just a flat shape. If you sketched your eye, however, so started making your eye shape little by little, getting gradually heavier and heavier with your pencil as you go along, one, you can get your eye shape to look better, but also you end up starting to add some shading without meaning to, because you're going back over your pencil lines. So essentially this piece of paper, I just want you to really practice getting down some tone. So practice pushing with your pencil. How hard can you get it? How dark can you get it? Can you make a bit of a tornado-like thing where it gets darker going down into the light? On your second piece of paper, I just want you to practice doing some sketching, practicing your simple shapes and making things look more 3D. Okay. Once you've had a practice around with your sketching and figuring out shading and how to make 3D shapes, you're going to use the reference picture that we've got of Greta Thunberg, and you're going to just start really lightly sketching that outline onto your background, but no more than that today. So my reference picture I'm going to be using is this one here. So I'm going to put that in front of me. And I'm just going to really carefully just look at the shapes of her face. The best way to start it is by going in maybe with the top of her head. But on your background, you need to make sure you keep some space either at the top or at the side somewhere for you to write in later. So if I'm going to go in with this picture, I might start by just really gently trying to make the outline of Greta's face. Okay, you can now see that I have got the outline of my head. So you can see it quite clearly going all the way around the outside of my picture. So that is where I'm going to start with her face. I'm then going to really carefully start going in with her hair, because the face is the final bits of detail we're going to add. So if you've got your reference picture up in front of you, you might choose to start with where her hairline is. And then we can just sketch that all the way around. Remember to make sure she's got her ears. And remember to look at the arrangement of somebody's face, the proportions that they've got. Their ears usually sit just at the bottom of their eye. So you follow it along and it's at the bottom of their eye, going to the bottom of their nose. So think about where you're placing somebody's ears when you're sketching to figure out where you're going to start putting their eyes. And today all you need to get done is that initial outline of her. So once you've practiced your shade and your tone, you're going in and doing your outlines. A beautiful page of some 3D objects that you have drawn, and we should also have your background for your piece of artwork. Some of you may have already started on your outline sketch. If you haven't started on your outline yet of Greta, you will be starting with that next week. Okay? I hope you enjoyed the lesson and I hope you're able to get on with this quite well.